Hi there, Richard Pavlidis here. Thanks for tuning in again, and today we're going to talk about outlining chord changes. So last week we went over some diatonic chord progressions that are very common in jazz, and today we're going to put that into practice. So we've got here the first 8 bars of the very familiar jazz standard, Autumn Leaves. Now we're in the key of B flat major this time, so we're going to need to make sure we learn our B flat major scale really well. So if you haven't done that, make sure you have a look at the PDFs from the previous 2 lessons and pay special attention to the B flat major scale. Now let's analyze the chord progression. We start off with a C minor 7, so the 2 chord. Then we go to an F7, that's the 5 chord. Then we have the 1 chord, the B flat major. And then the 4 chord, the E flat major 7 sharp 11. So we have a 2, 5, 1, 4. Then the next chord is an A minor 7 flat 5. So that's the 7th degree of the B flat major scale. And that chord functions as a 2 of the relative minor, which is G minor. I'll explain all that in good time. And before we land on the G minor, we have a D7. So that's the 5 chord of G minor. And then of course we land on the G minor. So a very classic example of cyclical harmony there, as you'll find repeated in a lot of jazz standards. Now what we want to do, instead of just playing exercises in B flat major over this, we want to try and outline the sound of each chord change. So we're going to start off by playing the arpeggios of each chord in root position. So that means starting on the 1 and going upwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're then going to play the same arpeggios, but in first inversion. So that means we're going to start on the 2nd note of each arpeggio, so the 3rd degree, if you're still following me, and move up there. So instead of going 1, 3, 5, 7, we're going to go 3, 5, 7, 1. So it's exactly the same notes over each chord, just in a different order. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're then going to move to 2nd inversion, so 5, 7, 1, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now that we can play our arpeggios really strongly through each chord, and we know those really well, it's time to introduce a concept that is going to be really, really important and that I'm going to be repeating a lot over the next few lessons. This is called voice leading. Okay, so what this means is that instead of playing all the arpeggios constantly going up and then starting again, going up, starting again, going up, that can sound a little bit jilted. So instead of doing that, we're going to try and lead nicely from chord to chord. So I'll give an example. In this first example, I'm going to lead up 1 chord, down the next one. So I'm going to play C, E flat, G, B flat for the first chord. That's the C minor 7. Then I'm going to move from that B flat straight down to an A, F, E flat, C, which are the notes that you'll find in the F7 arpeggio. So it's still the same notes again, I'm just mixing up the order so that they flow a little bit better. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I'm going to do the same concept, but here's where it gets a little interesting and a little closer to playing jazz saxophone lines. So we're going to allow ourselves to use some passing notes this time. Now that means notes that are still within the scale, within the B flat major scale, but that are not necessarily within the arpeggio of each chord. So they allow us to move even more smoothly and in more different directions between each chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to extend that concept one step further by allowing ourselves to play chromatic passing notes. So that means that we can essentially play any note, any sharp or flat, whether it's from our home scale of B flat major or not, as long as we're using it to lead smoothly onto one of the chord tones. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now the final step is that we don't necessarily have to be playing exclusively crotchets all the time. So when you download the PDF, you'll be able to see that I've written a couple of example solos there of how you can use this language as a basis for creating your own familiar and hip jazz lines over this very common chord progression. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's it for this week. I hope you found this useful. Again, please feel free to message me with any questions or suggestions that you've got. Happy practicing. Make sure you download that PDF and have a look at it. And next week we're going to look at the entire tune of Autumn Leaves, playing the melody and taking a full solo over a rhythm section. So happy practicing, and I'll see you then. Cheers.